because obviously fairies are very, very rooted in Ireland. Is there fairy magic? Is that a separate thing to general magic, or is there crossovers?
So I'm going to answer this two ways. Yes, there's an idea that the good folk themselves have a particular type of magic. And it's a kind of magic that generally humans don't have. Like, it's specific to them. It still influences things that like human magic would be aimed at, like health and luck and stuff like that. But good folk have a particular kind of energy, a particular magic to them. So because of that, there also were people who would specialize, not so much in the pre-Christian era that we know of, although I'm sure there were back then too, but particularly in the more modern era, there were people who would specialize just in knowing how to deal with fairies and fairy enchantments. So it kind of became like a magical subspecialty. Like if you were a wise woman or a cunning man or, what have you, you would know how to deal with like all sorts of different kinds of magic and potentially magic things, but you would particularly know how to counteract certain activities by the good folk. If they were targeting someone, if they were causing someone problems or enchanting them or anything along those lines, you would know how to deal with that because it was sort of a specialty field.
Now I'm going to jump back to where you mentioned the deities list and the other spirits. Why a separation? What's the difference?
So in a lot of ways, it is an artificial separation. It's a very fair question. When we look at Ireland, there is sort of an understanding that there are humans and then there are non-human spirits. And I'm really simplifying this. There's a lot of nuance here that I'm just ignoring at the moment. Otherwise, this is going to be 2 hours of me just trying to answer this one question. When we look at the non-human spirits, we have different groupings with a lot of crossover between them. So it makes it very confusing. And when we talk about the Irish gods, we're generally talking about the Tuatha Dé Danann, one of the groups of powerful beings who settled Ireland before humans came there. And they are the ones who are the most often understood to be gods, and they're the ones in these older manuscripts and texts that are called gods explicitly. This is Manannán, the god of the sea, or, the Morrigan is called a goddess, things like that. So we kind of approach it like we have the Tuatha Dé Danann, the old Irish gods, and then we have this sort of miscellaneous category. The Aos Sidhe, the fairies would be included in that, which is such a messy concept because some of them are Tuatha Dé Danann, some of them are not. Like I said, there's really not a lot of firm lines here. I mostly broke it down just to make it easier for readers to kind of see the way things would get categorized, particularly in the pre-Christian period. So you have the Tuatha Dé Danann, you have the Aos Sidhe, the people of the fairy hills, who are referred to as a separate group in the mythology. They just aren't clearly separated. It's a lot of crossover. I'll use Manannán as another example. So he is a god of the sea. He is eventually included among the Tuatha Dé Danann, but he was not originally. And he was originally the god of the otherworld, or at least, the majority of the otherworld. So that's kind of how messy it gets. So he starts out connected to the good folk and to the otherworld, and he's the king, and he's sort of this third factor in mythology with humans and the Tuatha Dé Danann. But then eventually he's sort of included among the Tuatha Dé Danann and is considered one of the Irish gods along with them. But that's not how it always was. And that actually really describes the majority of Irish mythology right there.
Okay.
It's confusing and messy and yeah. And then
like most family trees.
yes. Oh, don't get me started on the family trees. Yeah, the genealogy of the Tuatha Dé Danann is slightly unhinged. Yeah, and then we also have beings like the Cailleach. The Cailleach may, emphasis on may, be one of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Possibly, we don't know for certain. You have Dawn, who was supposedly, according to mythology, was the first human who died in Ireland. But he became kind of this ancestral god. All of the dead go to the House of Dawn. It's complicated. You have Crom Cruach, or Crom Dubh, who may or may not have been a literary invention originally. A lot of scholars think he probably was, because he doesn't appear in any stories of the Tuatha Dé Danann. He doesn't appear in any of like the original mythology stories. He kind of shows up later, and this is when we have to get that magnifying glass out in the later material, but he is pretty clearly coded as sort of a antichrist Moloch kind of biblical figure. Hence why most scholars feel that he probably was sort of a later addition to things. But he has still been considered a god for over 1,000 years. So he's definitely in there.
Earned it.
Yeah.
He's earned it by the sounds of it.
He's been treated that way for a long time. And there are certain holidays or times of year that are associated with him. You know, this is where I said it gets messy. It's all very messy. So yeah, and this is why I decided I would do the Tuatha Dé Danann in one section and then sort of these other messier things in a separate section instead of putting everything all together, because that makes it even more confusing.